As the mid-season invitational enters the knockout stage, the 4 teams representing the very best of Korea, Taiwan, China, and Europe will go head-to-head to determine the standing international champion. Each team has at least a small chance of taking the title after making it past the representatives from over 10 other regions. While many speculate that SKT are the tournament favorites, do the stats from the tournament so far back up that claim? Or is there a way for the other 3 teams to potentially best the reigning champions on the international stage? Starting with the first matchup between SKT and the Flash Wolves, there are some pretty clear disparities when comparing data between the 2 players. Starting in the top lane, Huni's matchup against MMD should prove to be interesting. Huni has over twice as many kills as MMD, but more deaths, fewer assists, and a smaller kill participation and assist percentage indicate a reliance on lane dominance and solo aggression. With an average 1.6 CS per minute higher and a large disparity in gold and damage per minute, Huni should be able to capitalize on his opponent during the weaker laning phase, even without pressure from his own jungler. Karsa should try to take advantage of Huni's playstyle to get himself rolling from repeated ganks while MMD slowly powers up from participating in the action. MMD does have a significant advantage in one key area, however, his champion pool. During the tournament so far, MMD has played 7 unique champions compared to Huni's 4 unique champions. When comparing the champion pools, MMD's role-playing style gives him a wide range of champions including Fizz and Kled, and Shen and Nautilus. This flexibility should allow him to be able to pick nearly any champion his team requires of him in order to absorb pressure from the rest of the map and allow his other laners to capitalize on his disruption during team fights. Huni, however, should try to draft aggressively and select a champion he can snowball the lane with in order to take advantage of probably the largest stylistic difference between 2 players. Flash Wolves should therefore look to ban away the Rumble, and pick up champions like Shed or Galio to utilize their global pressure when Huni attempts to make his own lead. SKT's aggressive top half is rounded out by Peanut, who sports an impressive 52 kills and 6.12 KDA. Similar to Huni, Peanut likes to make his own leads, displayed in statistics like his surprisingly low kill participation and high kill share. Unlike Huni, however, Peanut's incredible mechanical skill and map knowledge has allowed him to have a minuscule 15% of his team's deaths. Flash Wolves' Karsa, on the other hand, is far more risky in his playstyle. While also mechanically talented in his own right and with a huge lead in terms of vision statistics, Karsa has been known to simply be too aggressive at times, opening both himself and his team up to counterplay despite clean ward coverage. Map objective acquisitions are often determined by jungler pathing and tempo, and SKT has a pretty clear lead in terms of neutral buff takes. One interesting thing to note is the number of Barons SKT has given up. The only games SKT has lost Baron in were both of their losses to Flash Wolves and WE. Should Karsa be able to get a leg up on Peanut, Flash Wolves may be able to find a small window where their objective take could turn into a victory. But with a 79% Baron control rate and 78% Dragon control rate, that objective is unlikely to go Karsa's way. Indicative of both players' jungle playstyle, the champion pool is packed with champions strong in jungle skirmishing power and damage dealing capabilities, with one exception. SKT can and should take this outlier Ivern and use it as a curveball towards the Flash Wolves. By purposely drafting around the idea that Peanut will go against the grain and pick a supportive type jungler, SKT can effectively turn Flash Wolves' potential Graves or Lee Sin bans against themselves, forcing them to ban away champions seen as common counters to Ivern. Peanut can then focus more attention on the lanes and get them ahead, stymieing any attempt by Karsa to brute force a lead early into the game. On the other side, Karsa should look to work with his laners on stopping Peanut's snowball and using their superior vision control to try and pick him when he least expects it. It goes without saying that Faker should beat Maple in the mid lane. Or does it? And despite the expectations, Faker has actually been exploited this tournament, with WE even going so far as to choose Lucian in the mid lane against Faker's legendary Orianna. Maple, who actually has the least kills of any mid laner, should be able to act as a buffer against Faker, utilizing picks like Talia or Ryze to force his enemy around the map and aid his team in cross-map skirmishes. Again, the Flash Wolves member has a large lead in teamwork focused categories, like assist percentage and ward placed. The massive advantage of vision control continues to the mid lane, where Faker's measly 7 wards placed per game, coupled with Peanut's subpar ward count, is significant in this matchup in particular. SKT's biggest weakness at present is an overall lack of vision around the map, particularly centered around the middle lane. By picking extremely mobile champions, Maple should be able to easily gain a map pressure advantage over Faker. By simply playing safe, rotating with his team, and placing wards, Flash Wolves should be able to gain a lead in a lane nearly every other team in the world has failed to overcome. SKT should focus on getting Maple onto a champion with low teamfight impact. Champions like Talia and Ryze should be banned, and while LeBlanc is an equally mobile mage, she suffers from difficult teamfight effectiveness windows that SKT should be able to play around. Side lane presence can be mitigated by most any other champion in Huni's pool. Flash rolls on the other hand need to try to get Faker onto a relatively immobile mage like Orianna or Syndra, or far easier to exploit than Fizz or Ahri. With those champions gone, Flash rolls can effectively count mid lane as a matchup that should at least go even. Stats for the bottom lane are a bit deceiving at first sight. While it looks like Betty may have a statistical advantage over Bang, Betty's reliance on more supportive AD carries and Bang's stronger hyper carry play tip the numbers into Betty's favor. Interestingly, both AD carriers are at the lowest on the total damage per minute, CS per minute, and kill participation, but both rank among the highest in terms of kills. A high number of gold per minute and assist percentage for Bang indicates that while he may not be present for every kill, he is nearly always in an advantageous gold position by simply being with his team during crucial shutdowns or turret takes. Betty's Ashe is likely to be banned away from him, meaning he may have to go for champions like Varus or Jhin in her absence. Meanwhile, Bang's hypercarry pool could potentially be pinched if Flash Wolves don't feel like they can absorb the damage from a Twitch or Kog'Maw, but with strong drafting they could potentially force him into a poor lane matchup between an immobile hypercarry and something like a Jhin Malzahar, setting Karsa or Maple up for an easy roam. Wolf, like the rest of SKT, is ranked at the bottom of the pack in terms of warding. The support being 6 or more wards per game behind the enemy could spell some serious issues for the backbone of Team Vision. However, with a comparatively tiny number of deaths and a chart-topping number of assists, Wolf stands ahead of Sword Art, a seasoned player with few outright weaknesses. The biggest issue with Sword Art's play is his champion pool, which, despite being largely mage-type supports with decent damage output, places him on the low end of the total damage per minute. While that isn't necessarily the most important statistic for support players, it's important in this instance because of the champions involved. Malzahar, Karma, and Zyra are all known to put out large amounts of poke damage and respectable late game power, but Malzahar and Zyra in particular are weaker on the current patch. With Wolf's strong Tahm Kench play, it's likely that SKT will ban Karma outright and draft the Tahm Kench to counter any upside of the Malzahar or Zyra picks. Flash Wolves will need to either learn to deal with the Tahm Kench, or ban it if they feel like it's too strong against their preferred playstyle on the bottom lane. Overall, the matchup between SK Telecom and the Flash Wolves is closer than one would think without comparing the data. However, a subjective opinion is also needed to temper any expectations. Make no mistake, while the Flash Wolves likely pose the greatest threat in the tournament to SKT's global dominance, their ups and downs open a gap SKT can exploit. The reputation as the Korean Killers is an interesting one. While they have historically had a positive record against SKT, the Flash Wolves have never actually beaten them in any best-of series. Conversely, SKT are known for taking best-of series after losing the first game. This version of SKT is different than the one we last saw at international tournaments. Former players Duke and Bengi are nowhere near as aggressive and confident as Huni and Peanut. This makes for an interesting matchup, where Flash Wolves can no longer rely on their brute force and fast play to force SKT into making mistakes. Now they must compete with an equally aggressive team by outmaneuvering and forcing lose-lose situations in order to gain any sort of advantage. From what I've seen from both the regular season play and the tournament so far, I predict the Flash Wolves to come out of the gate swinging to take the first game, but will be unable to deal with SKT's adaptations and fall in the following 3 games. 3-1 SK Telecom. The second semi-final matchup is between two squads with wildly different international experience. G2's MSI performance is legendary at this point, and the team knows it. While the squad as a whole has certainly stepped up since last time, they entered the knockout stage with the worst record out of the 4 teams. The LPL representative, Team WE, finally won their first domestic title this last season, and got the chance to attend their first international showing since IEM in 2015. There, they debuted 2 new players, Jie and Mystic. Now the only 2 remaining members from that squad, Jie and Mystic have since been partnered with former WE Academy member 957, former Masters 3 member Condi, former IG substitute Ben, and former KT Rollster at Starhorn Royal Club support Zero. Commonly known as the team made of 5 B-tier players that make an S-tier team, this season's iteration is arguably a group of 2 S-tiers and 3 A-tiers. Condi and Mystic are at the top of their league, and were the pre-tournament players to watch for the team. Since then, 957, a typically subdued tank role player, has really stepped above and beyond anybody's expectations. With surprisingly aggressive and effective play, 957 came to this tournament in a big way, showing everybody that Kled and Fizz are a must ban for him. Even the tankier champions he's played are on the offensive end of the spectrum, far from the Maokai and Nautilus that were common picks for him throughout the season. Meanwhile, Expect has put up opposite numbers. A player known for his Gangplank and Renekton has found himself more on Shen, Nautilus, and Gragas for 8 of his 10 games. Pre-tournament analysis would have suggested 957 should stick to champions like Shen, with the lane bullies going towards Expect. However, G2 will most likely ban the Kled and a Fizz from 957, while WE could potentially ban away the Shen if they don't want to take it for themselves. Expect has actually performed admirably compared to the rest of his team, with strong numbers for assist percentage, death percentage, and warding. 957, however, ranks at the top in terms of assists, KDA, kill participation, and kill share. Both rank low in terms of CS per minute and gold per minute. Even though G2 has put Expect on tankier champions, his damage per minute and gold per minute are nearly equal. The largest golden damage disparity comes from the jungle, however, with Condi handily beating out Trick in nearly every statistical category. Trick ranks lowest in 8 of the 13 measures. With a ridiculously high number of deaths and laughably low number of kills, Trick adds nearly nothing of value to his team. Supportive type junglers are typically lower in terms of any sort of damage or kill statistics, but aid their team with high objective control. Against all odds though, Trick and G2 as a whole are simply terrible at objective control. G2 ranks the lowest in 12 of the 15 team rankings, losing 70% of all dragons and 62% of all barons, not to mention an abysmal 20% first turret and 40% first blood score. While Trick has tried to mitigate his losses by playing supportive champions like Nunu and Ivern, the objective control offered by these champions is not a guaranteed bonus, given the team's rocky track record. On the other side of the rift, China's best jungler Condi should be able to counter any attempted plays by Trick and gain an advantage for his team by simply being more effective overall. Condi has helped his team secure a massive 80% first tower and 50% first blood rate, both the highest in the tournament. Like Peanut, Condi has a reputation for aggression that was ignored when he took Ivern into a victory. Knowing this, Ivern could potentially be a contested pick if WE decides to ban the Nunu away, though it may be something they can play around. Condi's one weakness, however, is overconfidence. Like a better version of TSM's Svenskeren, Condi has an issue with invading the enemy jungle with little to no vision simply because he doesn't respect enemy positions or strength. While he can occasionally get off scot-free, this tendency has hurt WE in the past by wasting a rare early game lead on a foolish invade. GA has a strong preference in mid lane champions. With a reliance on supportive or mobile mid laners like Karma or Taliyah, GA could potentially be banned out with only a few bans. Until he goes back to Assassins, that is. When he entered the international stage at IEM, GA was instantly famous for taking the TP flash on Diana and having a massive performance. Every once in a while, he shows his old form with champions like LeBlanc and Kassadin, catching teams who assume supportive champions from him off guard. Perks, however, has been playing Syndra, Orianna, and Ryze for a long time and are easy to see coming. WE should not try to put any bans towards the mid lane and instead try to keep their pool open in an attempt to force G2's hand on bans like LeBlanc or Fizz. However, in the last game between WE and SKT, GA pulled out a pick that had been lurking in the background all tournament. In a huge upset victory, GA's Lucian mid pick destroyed Faker's Orianna in lane and was a key part of their victory. With Perks' Orianna being his most played champion this tournament, will G2 try and ban the Lucian away? Statistically, like the rest of G2, Perks is near the bottom in most categories. One interesting stat is his kills, which are second only to Faker at assist percentage, the highest kill share of any mid laner. This suggests that most of G2's kills were through Perks getting solo kills or kills with low assists. However, with such a large chunk of G2's deaths being on Perks, it's hard to count on him to consistently get an advantage in lane. GA's higher assist count and lower deaths are a testament to his supportive playstyle, and his team is better off for it. Mystic has been a topic of discussion on my channel before, where I compared him to his contemporaries in the LPL leading into the final weeks of the regular season. He has yet to disappoint since. Mystic has performed well in his second time on the international stage, ranking at the top of the charts in deaths, assists, KDA, and gold per minute. Interestingly, though Sven ranks at the bottom for kills, deaths, assists, KDA, and gold per minute, He ranks at the top in nearly every other category. Sven shows an ability to perform in spite of his disadvantages. His low gold per minute and high damage per minute is of particular note, with an outstanding gold efficiency. This is crucial in his team's success, where they can rely on him to still be a massive carry threat, even in the face of large disadvantages accrued over the course of the game. In fact, Sven could arguably call the larger carry threat than Mystic, who has always done slightly better on spellcasting and supportive type AD carries. Sven has historically been somebody who can play champions like Lucian or Caitlyn at a high level. This leads to a small overlap in champion pools, with Ashe, Caitlyn, and Kog'Maw potentially contested between the two. However, G2 has it easier in terms of bans, with Ashe being a clear choice for removal. Sven could then take Caitlyn, or, if she's banned, move to something like his signature Kennen pick. The support role is an interesting matchup between Ben's more aggressive style and Mithy's focus on helping Sven. For the purposes of this chart, I've combined the 9 games from Ben and the 1 game from Zero and treated their numbers as one player. While 10 kills may not sound like much, when compared to the 5 or 4 of the other 3 supports, it's an outlier. Ben's mage champ pool speaks to his bloody playstyle. A huge amount of deaths, gold per minute, damage per minute, and kill and assist participation showcase Ben's map play and roaming ability, not to mention his unique use of Malzahar on the current patch. Where most supports have been moving away from champions like Malzahar or Bard, Ben and WE as a whole have come to find success even when the meta isn't in their favor. Ben has also been the only support thus far in the tournament to play Galio, making it a potential flex pick going forward. Mithy plays more to the meta though, sticking to champions like Lulu, Tahm Kench, and Karma, with his unique picks being the Brahmin and Zyra. Unfortunately, with little success on the Zyra pick, it isn't likely to be seen in the future unless G2 can find a way to really play around Zyra's unique zone control as the support mage. Subjectively speaking, this match is by far the easiest to call. With WE on the upswing on the way out of group stage and G2 unable to find their footing, World Elite should have a pretty big advantage moving into the best of 5 against a team they didn't drop a game to a week ago. 957's newfound flexibility and Trick's disadvantages against Condi should make the top half of the map easy to work around for WE, while Zia's champion pool makes assisting his bottom lane easier in what is their closest matchup for laning. While G2 may be able to turn a fight or two with Condi's over-aggression, perhaps getting him caught by Trick, World Elite are nearly peerless in terms of team play. WE should be able to get an advantage early into the game, and then snowball it to smother G2 out entirely. 3-0 Team WE. SKT vs World Elite. 2 storied organizations will finally fight for international glory in the second biggest tournament of the year. Here, things get more speculative. Without the data from the semifinals as a factor, this matchup is actually pretty difficult to choose. With a 1-1 split going into group stage, the odds aren't entirely in SKT's favor. Even in their loss, WE managed to hold their own against SKT until they lost their footing at Baron and the game spiraled out of control. Second time these teams met, however, WE gave SKT one of their worst losses internationally, completely shutting Faker down with a Lucian mid-pick and only giving up 2 turrets. While you could argue that since the game had no bearing on team standings as they were both already locked into first and second place, one could say that SKT were actually taking it pretty seriously, at least in terms of picks and bans where they drafted a typical team comp, not to mention their emotions on their faces after the defeat. With a revenge match potentially waiting for them in the finals, can SKT turn the momentum around and take down World Elite? Both teams are known for clean late game play, but so far, World Elite appears to be the leader in that regard, with a massive number of assists and decent objective control percentages. It will be up to the individual lane assignments early on, as well as the picks and bans, to determine who has the edge after the 20-minute mark. 957 and Huni, while both aggressive top laners, have divergent champion pools. 957 has yet to play Kennen, Rumble, or Galio, while Huni hasn't played Kled or Jace. I expect SKT to ban the Kled, while World Elite bans away the Rumble. For Condi and Peanut, both players would love to get their hands on the Lee Sin pick, though it's unlikely to make it through the picks or bans for either team. With Graves a likely secondary pick for Peanut and Elise a standard second choice for Condi, the jungle pool could eventually be banned down to only Olaf for Peanut, or something like Ivern for either of them. In the mid lane, World Elite should take notes from the bans during the Flash Wolves series, though again, it's likely they will take away some of the more aggressive options in an attempt to force Faker onto something like Orianna. ZA could potentially see the Lucian banned against him if he doesn't lock in a champion in the first round, though his large champion pool will likely make any bans towards him a non-issue. Bottom lane could be the most interesting in terms of picks and bans. Both AD carries have played hyper carries during this tournament, though only Bang has found consistent success with his Twitch pick. Mystic and Bang both have strong Ezreal play to rely on, if for some reason both teams decide to double down on AD carry bans, though it's more likely that both AD carries will have their champions locked in the first half of the pick and ban phase. Ben has an advantage in terms of champion picks, which could be used to WE's advantage if he has a strong showing in the semifinals on champions that SKT would like to ban away. Overall, SKT has more to worry about in ban phase than WE does, who, using their relatively low exposure prior to MSI, have been able to get their hands on a lot of comfort picks. WE could easily ban away a few successful champions from SKT and force them into positions they rarely find themselves in. Will Huni be allowed to play Camille? Will GA revert into Assassins and try to beat down the unkillable Demon King? Can Mystic prove his skill against the best bottom lane in the world? WE will really have to work hard to beat SK Telecom in a best of series. As mentioned previously, it's an accomplishment that only few teams have been able to pull off. By exploiting vision control, playing safe in the jungle, and pressuring mid and top lane, World Elite could potentially look to unseat the 3-time world champions. But it won't come easy. Even on their best days, it'll be an intensely close matchup. My prediction? SKT 3-2. Be sure to watch the events unfold this weekend to see if the data can accurately predict the winner to this year's first major international event. The spreadsheet I created is in the description for those of you interested in the data I gathered. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.